Hey, everybody, welcome to Hearing God in John chapter 15. And this is honestly one of my favorite passages in all the Bible. And I would encourage you, if you're looking for a passage to memorize, this one should be very high on your list, especially verses 1 through 17. They are so foundational, so hopeful, and just so full of promise for what God intends to do in our lives. And you might be thinking, 17 verses, that sounds like a lot. It is, but I'm a big proponent of memorizing larger sections of scripture. I think it's actually easier in some ways than memorizing isolated verses because the verses tend to build on themselves and you continue to go back and review and they're in context. And so there's a lot of reasons that I love to memorize larger sections of scripture, and this is one of them. And so for my highlight today, I chose verses 1 and 2, and it's appropriate because here we are in the spring, and it's that time of year that we begin to think about gardening. Now, not me specifically so much. I'm not much of a gardener. I like to eat the produce, but not to grow it. And I enjoy flowers, but not growing them either. But I sure appreciate those of you who are gifted in those areas. But Jesus loved to use gardening as a metaphor for our spiritual lives. And this is kind of the preeminent place where he does so. And so 15, 1 and 2, Jesus says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. And so in this spiritual metaphor, um, we are the branches, Jesus is the vine, and God the Father is the gardener. So everybody has to be in the right seat and the right roles, and those are the roles. Jesus is the vine, we're the branches, God the Father is the gardener. And as we know, good gardeners know what to do to get the most fruit out of the plants. And that is what glorifies God. It says later on in verse 8, he says, By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. And so we are not intended to bear some fruit, some token fruit. We are meant to bear much fruit. But the gardener knows what to do to help us to do just that, to bear much fruit. And one of those skills that a good gardener uses is pruning. And in pruning plants, it is the cutting away of that which is old and dead, so that which is new and alive can be manifest and come forth, and fruit can be produced. And so God does this with us. He identifies those things that are hindering our spiritual growth, and like a master gardener, he takes out his shears and he cuts it away. He prunes that which is not conducive to spiritual growth in our lives. This is a loving act on his part that is for our good and for his glory. And so that's the explanation part. As we get into application, it really hits at the part that this is going to be painful. I mean, by definition, taking some kind of a sharp knife or shears or whatever it is that's required to do the pruning, it's a cutting, and that by definition is going to hurt, especially because that pruning targets areas of our lives that are comfortable or that are unhealthy attachments. And so when God prunes those things, it's going to feel like a loss. It's going to feel like something has died, because it has in a certain sense. We've lost something that we were probably treating as an idol. We were holding it in higher esteem than God. And God says, no, that's not going to work. You're not going to be able to bear fruit that way. And so he comes along and he cuts those things out of our lives. And then it's in those moments that we have to remind ourselves that the truth of the scripture is that this fruitful gain that will result from the pruning will far outweigh this sense of temporary loss. And so, how we respond to the pruning is of utmost importance. Will we trust God and embrace it? Will we welcome it? Will we say, God, I just lay myself before you and I give you full access and say, prune away whatever it is that you want and help me to be fruitful, because that's what's most important to me? Or will we resist and hinder the process of him pruning in our lives, in which case there are significant consequences for that. If we hinder the process, we're going to forfeit his best in our lives and ultimately rob him of his glory, because as verse 8 told us, it's his will that we bear much fruit and so prove to be his disciples. And so it's a hard teaching. I don't think anybody likes to be pruned because it does hurt temporarily. Oh, but the benefits are so much greater, and it is so much a blessing to be able to be fruitful for the master. And so in my response, just a very simple prayer: Father, may I lay myself down in complete surrender, welcoming your sharp blade. And so together, I trust that we will welcome his pruning and that the promised fruitfulness will come, and we'll be able to celebrate that together. So have a wonderful day.